Welcome to part 2, Modern Times, where Christie's, as we talked about last week, sold an NFT for nearly $70 million in 2021 by an artist named Beeple. No, really. Making him one of the top 3 most valuable living artists for his collage titled The First 5,000 Days. Now, I'm also finishing the pieces I started last week. I promise they get better than when we ended up last time. Art takes time, okay? Or maybe not, as we'll discover today. Now, last time we looked more historically, and now we're focusing on modern issues like AI, NFTs, art theft, artist protest, aesthetic expectations, and how the commodified world has shaped what is being produced and the art churn which traps artists. Again, I am no expert. I just love creating warrens when it comes to rabbit holes and creating wider connections between things. And to me, capitalism has impacted art hugely. In this video, we'll really see how it shaped it and the reaction to that.
Nobody gives a care about the fate of labor as long as they can get their instant gratification.
Artist protests. So the art galleries of the world aren't really there just for the benefit of the people. More so tax breaks, ways for the rich to feel superior. I mean, sure, there's cultural importance, but there's so many benefits for the rich. It's kind of like free housing for the expensive art for allegedly tax evasion. Oh, and of course, housing of things stolen from other lands because of colonizers. And hey, I'm originally from England. I'm mad at it too. Now, I have actually talked about how Barbie has been used as a form of protest. Yes, it's true. We cover all sorts of things on this channel, but you know how we establish the gatekeepiness of art galleries and how they're funded by unethical means in some, not all, cases? Artists don't like that either. The Whitney Museum of American Art is based in New York City, and it's been a stage for protest. They host the Whitney Biennial, which has been the site of bold artistic statements and protests over the years. However, the thing that I really want to focus on is what happened in 2019. As a bit of background, in November of 2018, Warren B. Kanders, who's vice chairman of the Whitney's Board of Trustees, came under fire after the company logo that he owns, the Jacksonville, which is a safari land group, was seen on tear gas canisters and smoke grenades used by the US government against asylum seekers at the US-Mexico border. A public letter conveyed the outrage of staff with nearly 100 employees signing it. Their request was simple: remove Warren B. Kanders from the board. Multiple protests were held, blogs were written, 75% of the artists displaying at the Whitney signed this open letter, but he didn't go, convinced that he's not the problem, despite that being literally the only request from staff and artists alike. See what I mean when I say that money rules the art world? His tear gas has been used internationally against many innocent people. Now, he did step down from the board in 2019, however, he still is making money from these things, even though he said he was actually divesting his portfolio away from it, but he's still getting money from all this horrificness. So I guess some people really can't change, can they, Warren? Have you heard of the Sackler family? Okay, maybe not, but have you heard of the opioid crisis? There, okay, I have you now. So they're linked inextricably. The Sackler family are the principal owners of Purdue Pharma, or should I say were, we'll get to it, the company that developed Oxycontin, a widely prescribed and widely abused painkiller, which the whole situation honestly requires an entire video unto itself, but safe to say that people aren't exactly happy at this company nor the family, including artists. But the Sackler family has donated heaps of money over the years to museums and art galleries, including the Louvre in Paris, the Guggenheim in New York, the Victoria and Albert Museum in London, the Tate in London. They've funded work at Yale and Oxford universities. They've got their money all over the place, basically. But people weren't happy about it, and protests have happened. In 2019, the campaign group PAIN, which stands for Prescription Addiction Intervention Now, waded into the fountains beneath the Louvre's pyramid with more than a dozen activists carrying red banners reading "Take down the Sackler name." And you know what? It did happen. It happened. They got removed. But the Louvre also pointed out that the legal period of the donors' names right was over. They never specified the reason being the protests or the outrage at the Sacklers being why they actually took the name down. At the Guggenheim, protesters in 2019 staged I'll call it a live lion in their wing there, and the museum stopped accepting funding from the Sacklers in 2020. However, their name only got taken down very quietly in 2022. So there has been some success at names being taken down, but the level of pressure required and coverage is honestly monumental, and even then it's really hard to win. That's what I mean when I tried to get the point across about corruption issues and how it's all about money and power. It's pretty gross to see how dirty money has funded these places which store such beautiful things, and it makes it challenging as an artist too. People want their work displayed, you want it purchased, enjoyed and reflected on, but fighting against the hand that feeds you, even if it's a toxic hand, is not an easy choice to make, and even then you may not win.
We're part of the same community. We're both apes.
Let's move on to art theft. Now, NFTs are inescapable, sadly, when it comes to this sort of thing. No matter how much I hate them, honestly, the look on my face whilst recording this section is much akin to April Ludgate. Now, you've all watched The Line Goes Up by now, and we've seen the boom and bust of the NFT space and how celebrities who had no idea what they were talking about with their ugly monkeys awkwardly trying to promote them, we've seen all of it. But NFTs have stolen from artists. I mean, shock horror, who'd have thought something bad would have happened from it? There have been some people who did get successful with their work being sold as NFTs at the very beginning, like Kenny Shatka? I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Don't get me wrong, but as much as NFTs were trying to label themselves as making art tangible for the people, it's, in my opinion, a big ol' hunk of BS which wastes copious amounts of energy and has preyed on many vulnerable people, and just a hustle, basically. That's all it is a hustle, at least in my opinion. Now, artists have been alerted to their work being stolen and minted as NFTs by their fans. The onus is on the artist to find this out and to report it. OpenSea, which is an NFT platform, say they apparently don't allow it. It's all bot driven, so you really think that'll work? Or do they even care? I mean, given the money that's available and the sheer volume of works being listed daily, I mean, come on. So remember back to 2021, we were getting our first vaccinations then, hope seemed so pure, but what else was happening was this ridiculous crypto and NFT boom. Artists saw their work being stolen, such as Aja Trier, who had 87,000 NFTs on OpenSea found of her work. 500 of them went up in one night alone, priced at $9.88 each, with nothing going to the artist personally. What's possibly worse is Qing Hang, who's a beloved artist who shared their battle with cancer with their fans. Now, after they passed, their work was found being sold as NFTs. There is zero respect for the artist, it's all about hustle of the money in all honesty. Artists' work isn't seen as work anymore. It's being used as a veil for allegedly nefarious things, like, in my opinion, grifts like NFTs, money laundering, and tax evasion. Since art can't be objectively valued, the sky is the limit, and limits don't exist for unscrupulous dealings. And who gets screwed over repeatedly? The artists themselves. The issue with art being seen as something which doesn't have inherent value is people think it isn't theft in a way. I mean, copyright is expensive and hard, and the onus, like I said before, is on the artists themselves to watch out for it. NFT Theft on Twitter wrote, "I want to stress that plagiarism is an unsolvable problem in the NFT space. It will always be part of it. As long as anyone can mint anything whilst remaining pseudonymous and an unregulated and decentralized technology, plagiarism is going to be a big problem." Guides have been made for artists on what they can do. I'll link it below in case this helps you, but also good luck getting a response from these platforms. It's the sucky world of unfettered capitalism. I mean, hell, you can use AI to make NFTs, so no artistic talent is really needed by the user, which brings me on to...
Now, please get ready for a scene from the movie Home, The Homies. A long beat in the back of their heads unfurls a final kiss. Kevin looks up. The snow shovels disappear across the floor. The snow shovels appear across the floor. The snow shovels explode.
AI has entered the chat. So we all know about the AI-generated art which won an award, right? You've all seen this? Cool, okay. It's been talked about at length by people, so I won't rehash it too much, but Jason Allen, the quote-unquote creator, used the Midjourney program in combination with AI Gigapixel, and his defense is saying he used a computer to generate the quote art, meaning he entered it into the digital art category in this competition. Who are you trying to fool? So yeah, obviously people are up in arms about this. Typing a few words into a machine doesn't mean that he's an artist. And digital art is not generated by AI, sweetie, but he still won the $300 prize, but things have moved on, as you'll well know. ArtStation, which is owned by Epic Games and is considered to be the leading online portfolio and community for artists working in video games, film, and comics, according to this article from Jess Weatherbed from The Verge, artists wanted AI to not be allowed to be submitted due to the fact that it combs over existing work and produces, quote, art from that. But ArtStation allowed it regardless. So the artists started to make anti-AI art, which ArtStation took down, saying it violates the terms of service, which is honestly ridiculous, and it's also unclear exactly what terms it's breaking to do so. But on top of all of that, artists have to opt in to a new no AI tagging feature in order to prevent their work from being allowed to be combed by AI programs, rather than that being automatic. But you know, it's owned by Epic Games, so ethics aren't really a big thing, right? But you know, that's again part of the problem. Another example is with Getty Images. So they themselves have banned AI generated work from being submitted or bought, but Shutterstock allows it. Now these are two rival companies which have taken two different stances on this. And hot off the press, Getty Images is actually suing Stability AI for using millions of images from their site for building their own commercial offering for their own financial benefit. I honestly stand with them on this. I know that people can get up in arms about copyright, but when it comes to this, it absolutely makes sense to me. I mean, hell, we are living under capitalism, right? That's how Getty got where they are. You'll all know this. A month or so ago, everyone was flooding their feeds with AI-generated art of themselves, which they paid $8 for the pleasure of posting cartoonish versions of themselves to Instagram. But this was all done via theft, and people only became aware of it after the fact. So if you did this, don't worry, this is why we share things and we can learn together. And if you're learning about this now, congratulations on having a life. What's that like? What happened was, the program used to create this art, Lensa, scoured the internet for artists' work and used that as their reference, without the knowledge of the artist, without payment to the artist. And how did people find out? By finding their signatures turned up on people's paid-for artwork in a garbly mess. Not only that, but the AI-generated art lightened people's skin, it sexualized them, and made them slimmer. So there's many issues on top of theft. There's a difference between people being inspired by artists and straight up splicing it together. According to the website Lexica, which tracks stable diffusion images and prompts, an artist who's very famous for their video game artwork, Rutkowski, his name has been used as a prompt more than 93,000 times. Some of the generated images even have his signature. I've seen people try to say that AI art is just like collage. Oh, sweetie, that is a terrible hill to try and die on. Collage is still made by the actual artist sourcing things themselves, piecing them together to create something entirely different with meaning, and it's a piece in itself. Honestly, I looked into the history of collage for this. It will take too long to get into, but this is not comparable to AI. To pull another quote, I have a friend of mine from Romania. She was telling me a lot of illustrators do their work for musicians and then losing out now. They're cancelling commissions left and right because a lot of these musicians are just using AI-generated art as covers. Rutkowski says anyone that makes digital art could be impacted. Some organizations, including the San Francisco Ballet, are already using AI-generated art in their promotional materials. And what's getting worse is we're heading into the hellish world of deepfakes. The Lensa app already turned childhood photos into nudes. The terms of service say to not enter children into that, and that may be part of the reason why. I also really recommend reading this Wired article, by the way, it's really well done. AI and prawn are becoming bigger and bigger issues, and people are pasting people onto what they want to see in prawn. I mean, the issue is this potentially being used as blackmail against people, because we know in particular if you're a woman or a minority in any way, whose word will matter more, especially if this potential evidence, quote unquote, is there. Whose reputation will get ruined easier? Come on. I mean, again, this is another video that I can make if you want me to. It would just take too long too, but I had to mention it because this is just grim.
The only extra sniff of here were these blurry pictures.
Yeah, it looks like we censored that, but it's just like a painting of nothing.
Aesthetic expectations. Instagram feeds, perfectly curated homes, graffiti art designed to attract tourists to take pictures in front of, makeup styles that mean faces all look the same. The hegemony of the aesthetic via capitalism due to personal branding. Much like artists have become a commodity brand, we've got our own personal brand now, and like little magpies we're making our nest nice and shiny, we've been working hard on adorning our homes to reflect us. But, not really us, an aesthetically pleasing version of us, which means that we want certain looks to match that and reflect our status. It's very easily done. If you're super rich, you get like a Koons for your garden, you get Pollock for your foyer, or one of the many artists we'll be talking about in the next section. But there's an argument to be made about how viewing ourselves as brands has affected how we create a look around us. We've internalized the capitalism messaging so much of individualism that if our space doesn't reflect us, or really what we want to be, as dictated by external values of success, we feel like a failure. Like the art you hang needs to reflect an aspirational version of you, a conversation piece. It can't be out of date, nor not match your gram. Heck, I fall prey to this too. I asked on Instagram what color people associate me with most, and it helped me choose the colors I use as my professional brand, and also the wall color for filming. We all do it, like myself included. I'm just pointing out this is definitely an issue. Things do need to suit the feed in order to get the reach. Our aesthetic expectations are higher overall. Restaurant bathrooms even need to be pretty. There's an overall lift in what people expect things to look like in order to be worthy, not just for special occasions but for every day, and again this influences our homes. We feel ashamed if it can't live up to what we want it to be, to what we see elsewhere, and when getting art, that means that there's a flattening, in my opinion, of what we see.
I'm not saying that this is any good. I'm saying that this will win. It's mass appeal. It's like what motels put up, and it hangs there for years, and no one ever throws acid at it.
Who did this? I like it.
Seriously? Sorry.
Yeah, it comforts me.
It's more about creating aesthetics, that simple, elevated look, as opposed to something people truly want. Now, personally, I feel like things are a bit more like the Gilded Age now, which isn't a positive thing. It's like a thin veneer of gold over a turd. The foundations of our societies aren't really built on supporting everyone, but the pressure for aesthetics is so strong due to social media and capitalism, meaning that people feel like they need to have a veneer in order to feel accepted. Now, I'm not going to tell people to throw out their IKEA prints or whatever. Art does have a positive effect on your mental health. The flattening of art in order to just be aesthetic and sellable is the thing that I really want to focus on here.
When I look at the balloon dog, even though it's a dog, it's a little bit like an equestrian piece to it. It's like the Trojan horse. So I wanted to make something mythic, something that is larger. It's about communal history.
What the fuck is going on in here on this day?
How capitalism has shaped what art is being produced. Now, as a millennial, and I know a lot of you are too, you remember how every teacher, caregiver, and relative wanted us to get a formal education, right? The only way to get a quote real job was to have a mountain of debt. And that also happened for the arts. Getting an MFA, a Master of Fine Arts, took huge popularity in the 2000s. Quoting directly from this fantastic article on ArtNet, according to the National Center for Education Statistics, the number of students who received an MFA in the visual and performing arts increased more than 50% between 2000 and 2014. In that same period, the cost of tuition at universities nationwide skyrocketed, with the average tuition price at universities increasing by nearly 50% as well. Factoring in room and board, students graduating a 2-year MFA program in the last 6 years will have paid approximately $100,000. And that's not to mention all the other expenses. Plus, it was actually found out that the most successful people had graduated from only a few select schools, with Yale being on top. With the old adage, I think that you'll be able to guess before reading the long but incredibly good article, that most of the success comes down to great wealthy connections. Funny that you get that at the most prestigious schools, huh? Of course, I'm not saying that the people that do this aren't skilled or hardworking. With the art world being so small, the who you know, as with many businesses, matters more than in what you know and your skill level. So if you take that part out, getting an MFA isn't necessary in terms of becoming successful, but as is sadly with a lot of cases when it comes to creativity, coming from money with that cushion to be able to fall back on and have built-in connections means it's just an easier ride. But the market with skilled artists is incredibly saturated, and there's not as much space for them as the demand isn't high enough. However,
Get higher, girl!
have you heard of zombie formalism? Even if you haven't, I'm going to talk about it briefly to show you the issue here. The term was coined by the artist and critic Walter Robinson to describe these pieces which all look vaguely similar and like they suit the clout chase of the 1%. They're not really daring, they aren't really new, it's like a rehash of postmodernism according to people in the know, not me. In the 2000s, what a decade, the art market had a kind of boom, where people were snapping at work by young artists in order to flip them. The works that were wanted were kind of abstract, huge, simplistic, but with a ton of meaning behind them, or at least that's what the galleries would tell you. Do you remember how I spoke about those statement pieces last time? Yeah, like that, but you know, fire extinguishers were being used sometimes. I like this piece on Vulture by Jerry Saltz, which is a very apt surname there, sir. All this painting employs a similar vocabulary of smudges, stains, spray paint, flecks, spills, splotches, almost monochromatic fields, silk screening or stenciling, edge-to-edge, geometric or biomorphic composition is de rigueur, as are irregular grids, lattice and moire patterns. Many times, stretch bars play a part. It's supposed to tell us, see, I know I'm a painting, I'm not glitzy like something from Takashi Murakami and Jeff Koons. Much of this product is just painters playing scale, doing finger exercises, without the wit or the rapport that makes music. Instead, it's a visual mosaic, blending in. And of course, you will remember that we talked about Murakami and Jeff Koons last time. See, I know how to weave things together. Pretty much all these artists are properly trained and taught by their teachers to replicate the work of the greats from the 60s. And that's kind of what happened, but it's like very flat mimicry. It looks great in modern flashy homes though. What happened in the 2000s, starting in about 2003, was pieces by these new artists were being snapped up by collectors cheaply in order to flip them for profit. A bit like the housing market. Remember what happened to that in like 2007? What fun we had, huh? But this didn't really benefit the artist. It was, again, just a way for second-party sellers to try and make money, and artists were sort of conditioned into making the work that felt very similar. I really want to stress here that secondary sales do not benefit the artist directly. Not at all. It's only the first sale that they benefit from, so everything after that is like a flipping market for the rich. Not exactly what you would call expressing yourself. As is written about brilliantly in this article from Artnet by Chris Wiley, with the GFC, weirdly the art market continued to be a lucrative place, and becoming more of a booming industry after that point for flippers. In my opinion, that the change had truly happened, that art is for capitalism and its endeavours of more is more instead of truth, beauty, freedom and love, you know, whatever bohemian view of art is meant to be. To quote Wiley, certain art flippers have been known to buy up large quantities of particular artists' work. They bolster the artist's reputation through various channels of influence. A popular Instagram account, say, or a network of friends and collectors they advise, only to dump the works at auction after their price inflates. The art market isn't regulated once again, so it's prime for this sort of pump and dump, especially in comparison to the stock market, where, you know, stuff has definitely happened, sure, but there are so many checks and balances in place, you can't audit art in the same way that you can with a financial institution. Sometimes the art flippers do lose out though, despite their best efforts, and of course you can sell pieces at a loss, but honestly I don't feel bad for those investors. My personal thing is this is affecting the artists. Again, to quote this article, if you're an artist, a calamitous drop in prices brought on by speculative noodling can mean an end to your ability to sell art. An end, to some degree, to your career. And that is a thing that bothers me, the impact on the artists. Artists who are trained to create pieces in a certain way in order to achieve success and the ability to live off their craft. You know, you can just be at the whim of someone who sees your work as an ROI instead of a piece of work. Another clear example of this in my mind is movie studios. They only want to make safe bets, they want to redo franchises again and again, and this requires a whole separate video, so let me know if you want me to talk about movie studios and animation and those issues because it's ridiculous. This also makes me think about the music industry and how that in itself has been changed by TikTok in particular. You need a hook, you need a hit, it needs to be memeable and meaningful at the same time. Actually, you know what, scratch that. It doesn't need to be meaningful as people just want to insert themselves into the narrative. So just make it relatable, maybe a nursery rhyme or like a little bit absurd, and then you can just sell. As we've gone on this journey together, I can't help but be saddened by looking at how art has been controlled and diluted by capitalism. Whilst I shared in video 1, the rich have always controlled the art world, it's helped them maintain power, avoid taxes and launder money, it's become even worse by the capitalist churn. Like I said, I've read a lot of think pieces for this and you'll have spotted for my ridiculous amount of references, but the discourse around not being paid for the art that you make, how holding down a regular job and keeping your creativity pure could be the cure. But, you know, honestly, like anyone who works full-time knows that the job in itself drains you, let alone all the other outside work commitments you have. So unless you're born into wealth and can become a painter like Cary Grant did in An Affair to Remember, or you know, an artist in whatever way you want, you're tied to the capitalist machine, which art truly does not fit into, in my opinion. You can go and work for the mouse, you can work for another huge conglomerate, but people are treated like machines there. When people are trained to be more like machines and creating sellable pieces by the art schools they attend to mimic the greats, according to professors, it's really easy to see how capitalism has ruined things. But again, that is my personal opinion here. Plus, you know, I also just hate the way that schools get you to try and fit into a particular mold. It certainly made me personally hate my favorite class, which was art, when we arrived here in Aotearoa. Like, we had to copy artists regardless of our connection to them, and obviously being brand new here, I had no connection. But why were we being asked to do that? Oh, to mimic their style, which equals sellable skills? Ah, gotcha. So it didn't matter about my own personal style at all. No, none of that mattered.
Stop it. Speaking of stop it, I should probably do that.
So let's have a look to the future. With how AI is already stealing art, who knows what's going to happen in the future? Creative integrity has been getting etched away via whatever platform you can monetize yourself on, whether it's Fiverr to YouTube to whatever. When will AI create the art people want to put on their walls instead? AI's already won art competitions in comparison to human artists. What's actually stopping it from becoming so much better in 10 or 20 years? We don't need to worry about writing songs or honing our skills, as we'll never be as on pitch, we'll never have brushstrokes as smooth or proportions as precise. There could be a way for artists to be able to work globally, maybe by making their work printable on 3D printers or something, or perhaps, like what I shared about with the artistic revolt to the Industrial Revolution, there could be a swing towards grittiness, reality and imperfection. It could be argued that with how the panoramic made for a surge in cottagecore and nature escapism, the same could be the case, especially with how the climate crisis is already here and capitalism is only furthering it, not reducing it. There's a trend I've been seeing with people relishing in taking things a bit slower, maybe expecting to wait for art and appreciation. That sense of anticipation is what we want to return to. But for those who do work for studios, I honestly don't know how to help them other than them unionizing. But like, the business dictates the story and safer bets are wanted. The spectacle has to be big, it has to not offend the corporate stakeholders. And hey, you know, honestly, if it's bad, produce it on Netflix and you'll get a bunch of free press from people reviewing it anyway. With such saturation of creatives, yet only a few big names, the creative economy I don't really see changing until the arts are seen as not being disposable any longer. When people are sad or want to understand something or are going through turmoil or want to pick themselves up, they don't turn to spreadsheets for comfort, they turn to art, something which intrinsically has no monetary value but makes all the difference for the soul.
Marge, I'm confused. Is this a happy ending or a sad ending?
It's an ending, that's enough.
I think that Marge summed it up best, honestly. I'm sorry I don't have a neat little bow to put on things and to give you all hope about something. The only hope I can give to you is from what people were commenting last time, with the fact that this made you want to get back into painting. Do it, honestly. Like, I had such a good time painting these. I know that they're not going to end up on like a gallery wall or anything, but they're going to end up on my wall, and I'm proud of that, and I'm proud of the fact that I actually shared this with you, because I was honestly quite daunted to do that. So yes, I learnt a lot. I know that these aren't great, but I'm still working on it, I'm still learning, and it was a really enjoyable and calming process. I was just watching a whole bunch of Buffy whilst I was like painting these. And it was really freeing to do so. But freeing and capitalism, what are two words that really do not go together? And I think that's kind of the crux of the issue when it comes to art and capitalism. Monetizing creativity is always going to come against like this corporate machine, and you're going to get these poor artists that are taken advantage of. Again, if there are topics that you want me to talk about more from these videos, like in particular when it comes to animators, because you know me and Disney, or street artists, like there are so many things which I could and would dive into more. The only thing I can encourage you to do is get back into creating your own art, support other local artists. Just because art doesn't have value in a capitalist system, it doesn't mean it doesn't have real value in my books. The way that we've been trained to think about things just in terms of monetary value is completely wrong in my books. So I hope that you enjoyed these videos. I definitely did enjoy painting these and working on these, and I'll see you next week for a Buffy video. And the week after is going to be either the Royalists video or maybe a break. I don't know, because these have actually taken me a really long time to do. So anyway, I will see you next time. I hope you all have a wonderful day and take care of yourselves. Bye!